If you don't own a Honda Prologue, you're probably here to find out what I don't like about it, and I don't blame you. If it bleeds, it leads. There's no lane centering. You can't use the superchargers as part of your native navigation. It does work at superchargers, but it's kind of your own research project. What it offers in practicality, it lacks in power and sporty feel. The seats aren't super comfortable or ventilated for that matter. The park assist sensors are loud and annoying and frankly scare my wife. And finally, the battery percentage is a secret unless you turn it off or ask Google Assistant, which works for some people, but not for me. And I'll propose a fix for every one of those problems with the Prologue by the end of this video, so stick around. And if you do like the Prologue because you own one, some of those facts may be pluses for you, and I'll give you other reasons why you're absolutely right if you like yours. Starting with the fact that it's a Honda. Well, sort of. Honda owners have always known they have a great product in the driveway, plus a little bit of a secret, which I will reveal later. They're never number one in value, but they're always close. They never have the most features, and they're always a little bit behind on innovation, but the features they do have are reliable, intuitive, and ergonomic. Think first-gen NSX.
Really, it's rather too well house-trained for the public roads. After all, any supercar finds speed limits and narrow lanes hard to take.
It was the supercar you could daily drive. Honda couldn't hide its practical roots even with their Halo car. And let's face it, the one competitor that does outsell Honda doesn't make as good looking a car, and neither do the domestic brands that are always trying to catch up. But this vehicle is made by GM and sold as a Honda, so can it stand up to the Honda standard? I've owned it for 1 year and 10,000 miles, and I intend to find out today. If we're talking internal combustion, the sedan to get is this. But this is the Honda secret. And if you're too young for that one, obviously sedans are out of date. It's this and this. If you bought a Honda anytime in the past, it's likely you also considered the Toyota because it's just the default NPC thing to buy. However, in the EV space, Toyota's offering, at least up until now, just isn't quite competitive enough to consider, and Honda hasn't tried at all. So in the EV space, the Camry is this. The California Camry, in fact. But I don't know if the name still holds up because of, American politics.
Everything's computer.
And contrary to the Accord Camry RAV4 CRV argument, the EV space is undecided who is number two. The Accord has been number two every year it wasn't number one, which is most years. See, Toyotas are popular, but they've never been cool. They're cool to Toyota owners, and they have very dedicated fan bases for their niche vehicles, but they're not cool in general. Again, for the record, I own a Toyota. More on that in a minute. However, the Honda Civic is still cool to this day, I would argue. It's running out of cool because it runs on gas, it's a four-door sedan, and sedans are dying a very slow and painful death. But the reason the Civic is cool is because it's been cool and popular throughout the years. The Corolla is popular. The Civic is cool. You can talk to me about a $50,000 GR Corolla, but that's an attempt to be cool. And the proof lies in the Google search. It's one of the only cars that you type in and it shows reviews and websites, but it doesn't show any for sale at the very top because it's basically impossible to buy, which coincidentally is the same problem the Acura NSX suffered from. And because the GR Corolla is a niche halo car, not a top seller, a $50,000 Corolla isn't cool because the people who want to be cool and who happen to be cool can't usually afford it. My 2006 8th gen Civic Si was $20,000. And the Civic Si is the Mustang GT of Japanese cars. And you can afford to buy it, you can afford to own it, and it's just as reliable as the regular Civic. The Si has been the coolest manual front-wheel drive you could buy since the Fast and the Furious and the S2000. Because the Civic Si just was an S2000 with a little tiny bit less displacement and a roof. And as cool as the Supra was, I mean, it was the star of the Fast and Furious, which was the boom of the Japanese mod culture in America, but no one could afford a Supra. You could talk to your friends about it, but you couldn't buy one. And why am I talking about gas cars in an electric car verdict review? I've actually already said the answer. It's because of the price. The Civic Si was never the best performer. It was never the fastest off the line. It would never win the race in your neighborhood. But it was a performance car that people could afford, and between lights and city traffic or just rolling around on the strip, it made the noise, it made the zoom, and it was awesome. And because that was its best area to perform, it was arguably more fun than the more powerful comps that would get you in trouble in that same area. Cops pulled Supras over and Mustang GTs, not Civic SIs. But we're talking about price, and that brings me to the Honda Prologue lease. If there ever was a room with a Prologue in it, the lease price is the elephant in that room. A Civic lease, for example, has been more expensive than a Prologue lease for most of the time the Prologue was out. Obviously, I bought early and paid full price, but most people got their Prologue on a really good lease deal. So if you wanted to go electric and the last straw was you couldn't afford it, now you can. Or maybe you're just like every other Honda owner and you're cheap when it comes to cars. More on that in a minute. The Prologue is the cheapest Honda you can get as far as monthly payment most of the time. The sticker is how much? And the lease is what? And I just walked past the Honda Secret. It's a win in perpetuity. Let's say you've got my 2006 Honda Civic Si. You put 7,500 miles on it over the first year of ownership, and you trade it in for $800 less than you paid. Yes, that really happened to me. And it happened with our 2017 Civic Coupe, and it happened with our 2019 Civic Sedan. And it happened with my 2018 Honda Clarity. And it happened with my 2017 Honda CR-V. What's your down payment on your next Honda? The positive equity on your current Honda. Because you got a good 60-month rate, and Hondas don't lose value. So in a lot of ways, a Honda Accord, Civic, CR-V is the cheapest way to own a small sedan or a mid-size sedan or a crossover. And that's the Prologue too. It's the cheapest way to go EV. You get EV Go money, you can do home charging, you've got a mobile charger if you want it, you've got money to install if you decide that's something you want to do. All of this makes the lease that much more attractive. Plus you don't have to worry about cratering resale value, which I am currently dealing with, and you're set. You decide to get another electric vehicle, you've done all the things that prepare you for that. Plus the guy at the dealership that sold you the other 8 Hondas you've bought knows your name and phone number already, and that's easy too. So if this is a verdict video, what's the verdict? Doug DeMuro gives the Prologue a 2 out of 10 for cool factor, but I disagree, because if you leased a Prologue with one of these crazy lease deals, you got everything practical about an EV, and you still got the Honda badge you wanted, which is cool. Plus, the car is a total one-off, so if you got a trouble-free example, it's cool. Also, Honda owners that don't have a Prologue are jealous, I promise. I've driven this thing around enough to know that the people that pay attention to it are Pilot, Passport, CR-V, and other older Honda owners. So, while I agree with Doug on most of his Doug score ratings, I think the value is higher than a 5, and I know the cool factor is higher than a 2 as well. Time to drive the all-electric Honda Prologue, and I've owned a few EVs. This one is designed with first EV ownership in mind. It's simplified, it's familiar, and it tries not to be overwhelming. Even though I know no matter what you do, the first EV you own can be a little bit overwhelming. And first, there's Google navigation. It's good. It's not great. Hey Google, how do I navigate somewhere?
To get directions to a destination, say something like, "Get directions to the nearest pharmacy," or "Take me to the closest gas station."
Hey Google, take me to the closest gas station.
Sorry, I didn't understand.
But only the Camry is great. What it will do is get you to your destination without running out of charge, even if you have no idea what you're doing. And that's not true for every EV. Can you be routed to a level 2 charger if you don't customize your settings properly? Sure. But since you'll be sitting there for a minute, there's a nice man on the internet with a receding hairline who can help you figure out how to keep that from happening. He can show you some additional apps and even show you how to supercharge. Speaking of apps, the Honda has CarPlay. If you know, you know. And Honda drivers know. The typical Honda infotainment system is pukey. Not like in your lap at a party, super embarrassing, but like in your mouth a little bit. However, 2017 and up, basically every Honda got CarPlay. And all the Prologues have CarPlay too, making the UI experience, I think, better than a typical Honda overall. Here's a hot take. The UI in the Honda Prologue is basically a Chevy Bolt with a bigger driver's display. And of course, CarPlay is wireless instead of wired. I'm fairly certain of this too. I am a Bolt owner. That's 1 point for Honda to go with 1 point for Ford, because Ford will actually let you use Apple Maps through CarPlay to navigate between stops with EV charging. The fact that there's no headlight button is something that a press car recipient who is clamoring for something to criticize would get hyper-focused on, but it's not a thing. I just switched mine to auto when I got it. Same with the high beams, and the couple times I accidentally turned off auto high beam because I pulled back on the stock too long, I just headed over to the control shortcut menu and one button fixes it. It's actually an elegant solution, and the more I use it, the more I feel this way about it, as well as the blinker stalk where the headlights should be. Both wipers appear here and are easy to read and understand visually, even while driving. The hardest part about the UI for Honda loyalists is that it's a completely new experience, but CarPlay and the controls shortcut menu, coupled with Google turn-by-turn, with integrated voice commands, when they work, covers about 90% of anything you'd be doing, with lots of one-command ways to control the car during your journey.
And yes, I know, charging speeds. From what I've found, if you don't like how fast the Prologue charges, stick to superchargers. Plan your route in the Tesla app, buy the subscription, and run your fast charge prep about 40 minutes before you get to each charger. And of course, Tony actually does this.
So let's talk to him about some recent road trips he took. The way I travel is not the same as a regular person. You would enter it in the GPS, you would ask it to take you there, you would let it send you to places and charge. You've done a lot of these, in fact.
I looked at your last video and it was interesting that you don't want to travel 95. And I'm the same way, just because I'm doing a lot of long distance down to Virginia from Pennsylvania and more recently South Carolina.
You've got the number of kilowatt hours you grabbed, time, the locations.
I had gone to my commencement up in Connecticut the day before, which was about a 4.5 hour trip from us. So 8 hours in the car, get up next day. I had to go down to South Carolina, and that was all by myself.
Halifax, North Carolina.
That was the big boy units. That was the 3.5 versions.
The white ones.
The white ones. And it's 60 bay. It's beautiful. It's got a restaurant, Oasis, and then there's a Dunkin' Donuts with a pizza shop in it.
Basically the epitome of full service. And it looks like 35 cents per kilowatt hour. Is that a membership cost or was that just your...
That is.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So all these Tesla stops that I did, I basically wanted to make sure that I was getting member price because that same 36, 35, 37 could have been easily 44, 50 something, because depending on the obviously time of day.
So just for the audience, talk to me about the membership and value when it comes to number of charges, number of kilowatt hours. When does that become completely and totally a no-brainer to just go ahead and sign up for? What is that, 3-4 charges?
Within 2 to 3 charges, really. I go a little bit sometimes beyond. I try to follow the EV etiquette rule, but there's times my wife's like, we're not getting out of the car again. I'm like, all right, fine.
The whole point about not charging high is to leave these batteries in a state of high charge, right? That's right. Basically you have a bunch of really excited atoms with nowhere to go, right? Not Adam the person, Adam with a T. And they start to eat into essentially the other portions of the battery for just from a high level. And that's why, but in the event that you're boosting it up and then you're immediately draining it back down, the risk becomes much, much lower. So, but you're a 90% tip top on a long road trip. And that was because, like you said, you have family in the car saying, hey, let's stop as few times as possible.
Really, I've gotten it down to, like, on this trip specifically, I've gotten down to 10%.
On the bottom end, are you ignoring or using only as a reference the Google Maps percentage, right? The percentage is a little bit, if not a lot, conservative. Are you ignoring that? What is it telling you when you show up at 10%? What is it telling you you're going to show up at?
When I do show up at 10%, it was usually telling me 7-8%. So I ignore it. I know from our trips and some of the past stuff we've done to, okay, that's kind of roughly what I'll get, but I'll have 3 to 4% more when I get there.
Have you noticed any improvements to that calculation over time? Because I know we talked about that in January.
Yeah, I don't really think it's done that much.
And the reason why I have you on the channel is because we're literally talking about opposite methods. Because I live in a charging desert, every time I encounter a charger, regardless of my state of charge, I go all the way back to 80. And then basically you have now enough experience. What are you at, 14,000 miles?
Yep, just about 14,000.
So you have enough road trip experience in the Prologue now to be able to say, okay, I will push the Google Maps percentage a little further. I will push the battery a little higher, and I will pull it down a little lower based on recommendation. Now, these superchargers, as we know, are not available in the navigation system itself. So what is the approach you're using to navigate between those?
I've actually done 2 approaches. I go to Graysonville, Maryland, Wawa. I can pull up to where it's on the same side as my charging port. That makes it easier. I'm out of every everybody's way. I'm not being a jerk about taking up 2 spots. I only do that if I have to. So I'll either put in Wawa and Graysonville, Maryland, or some of them I'll do Tesla Supercharger. Like, Tesla is not compatible with your system. And I'm like, shut up, continue. And it'll go through. So it does.
Now, is it using it as a charging stop in your navigation?
No, it's not using it as a charging stop, and it's not calculating any of that in, but at least it still allows me to go to that destination.
Now, I mentioned in another video that basically I'm clearing my navigation out, right? Every time I get to another charging stop, I'm like ending navigation and then re-navigating to my destination. Are you finding yourself doing that as well?
I kind of cherry pick where I'm going. I'm like, okay, well, what's the next town up, or what's a destination point, and I put it in.
Speaking of towns, you had a really bespoke experience of going to check out the Apex charger in North Carolina, the new Ioniq charger. What was your experience? How do you feel? What was the prices like? And give me an opinion of Ioniq overall for you.
It's really a neat little place. Now, I arrived at 8:00 on a Monday night. There was nobody there.
And this is after hours, so you didn't get to see the restaurant.
Correct. But you can go into the rechargery to get to use the restroom or to get the vending machine, which I did do, I didn't buy anything vending, but I did kind of go through and see what are their prices like. And I thought they were reasonable. So overall, I liked it because I literally got out and the cable was light enough that while I had my phone filming, I plugged in the car. It immediately went blue. I went over. It recognized that I was in 4B or whatever it was, and I just had to tap my phone.
I tested adapters based on that. Can you do a one-hand operation? That's a pretty good test, especially if you go back to the Electrify America days with the short cables where it was just impossible to lift and move. So not only is the charging experience good, the price is reasonable. Ioniq's got challenges as far as the network because there's competition at least most places. And I think Ioniq is in the competitive type of venue. They're working to install charging at more competitive areas so they can profit initially. They need to be able to have volume. And so I think that those little things are going to end up being the reasons why people choose Ioniq over other things. I mean, obviously, once the network's installed into GPSs and things, it'll become easier.
Right. One thing I wanted to note was it was raining when I got there. And I'm standing there to get in the door, which you have to scan, an app to go into. The app's a little clunky, but it does show you, front door, back door, whatever. But there's no awning. So I'm getting wet while I'm trying to open the door. It was 36 cents. I know it was 39 cents like a week ago or whatever. So I think they're trying to be competitive that way, like you said.
With a membership to Tesla, that's right on the dot with as far as competitive pricing, right? Because I mean, those vary time of day, where you are, but they're basically mid to high 30s.
Yes, correct.
If you live in the United States, at least the lower 48, the range that any Honda Prologue trim offers is going to be plenty. That said, here's the impact that speed will have on that range. I made a whole video about it. You can check it out if you want to learn more. If your Honda Prologue is your first EV, that means you're not a Tesla owner and you have the option to not use one-pedal driving. So what are you missing if you don't? I'll break it down as quickly and simply as possible. First, coasting is not equal to regen. Relying on pressing the brake to stop in the age of we're always looking down at some other device isn't the safest way. But if your vehicle immediately starts to slow in the event you lift off the accelerator, that's the safest way. Do you expect your vehicle to stop itself? Yes. As much as you might not believe that's true, the answer is yes. I was on a road trip recently on an unfamiliar road and I didn't know what the next turn held for me, so I released the throttle and it slowed enough. If the stoplight turns yellow right before I get to it, I release the throttle and it slows to a stop. Yes, completely. Yes, every time. And if that's not doing it for you, switch your one-pedal driving setting to high. And if that doesn't work, you likely aren't providing enough following distance or you're late. And of course, there's the third outcome, which is you charged your vehicle to 100%, which makes one-pedal driving almost useless, and it's another reason never to charge to 100%. Because if you're at 100%, your Prologue can't regen. Where does the energy go? It's already full. And if all of the other reasons not to charge to 100% weren't enough, that one takes the cake for me, because it changes the way my vehicle drives. And I am 100% admittedly addicted to one-pedal driving at this point, which takes a lot of EVs completely off the table for me. The Nissan Ariya can't do it. 15, 10... 8, 6, and now it's releasing the brake, and 5 miles an hour it just continues forward. I had a Fisker Ocean that didn't have it, and I desperately missed it. Even my son's Bolt has one pedal driving. The next reason to always use one pedal driving is brake wear. And yes, you can argue with me all you want that when you press the brake, it's actually activating regen. That's true unless you press it too hard, which you would need to do if you were coasting and you looked down at something and were surprised when you looked back up. Your brakes will engage the absolute least amount if you use one pedal driving, because anytime you would ask for the max amount of deceleration, which would be off the throttle, the computer knows exactly how much to slow down and only use regen. Also, big misconception here, one pedal driving is not a driving style. It is literally the function of the setting. You are not trying to accelerate as quickly as possible so you can slow down as quickly as possible. You don't have to apply the throttle very hard to get it to go, and you don't have to release the throttle very much to get it to slow. It's all small, calculated inputs. And of course, when you're sitting at a light, you press nothing, which I've found has completely changed the way I approach sitting at a light. It takes the race away from the light turning green, at least in my opinion. And I argued in a previous video that tire wear is reduced when you use one pedal driving, and I had an excellent conversation with one of my viewers about that. And the best way I can sum it up is this comment. One pedal incentivizes slower, easier driving, and especially stopping. You anticipate how much you need to stop based on the way the computer slows the vehicle, and you train yourself to stay within the limits of those deceleration parameters for your normal driving. The expectation of coming to a stop without applying the brakes is a learned behavior. You can obviously still drive in one pedal driving mode and use the brake, but that's an aggressive choice. And if you're going to drive aggressively, it really doesn't matter which way you want to do it. But I will warn you, if you get used to it, you may encounter an EV later that doesn't have it. Speaking of tire wear and friction, the Prologue isn't fast. If you're late often and you try to fix that on the highway on the way to work, you're going to find that you want more from the Prologue because it's so big. And if you try to steer it like it's not, you'll notice how heavy it is too. See, another part of the Honda secret is that Hondas are all sporty. Civic LX, sporty. Accord Hybrid, sporty. Even my massively long Honda Clarity was sporty feeling when I drove it. The Prologue is not sporty, and sport mode in the Elite won't fix it either. But what if it was? More on that in a minute. Either way, don't be surprised if you want more from the Prologue if you're used to having power. But if you're used to driving gas cars, the Prologue's going to seem like it's got a ton of power because it has instant torque and about the same amount of power as other SUVs in its class. Knowing it's such a big vehicle, I don't really push it. Plus, nobody knows what it is anyway, so there's not a bodybuilder in an F-350 with an exhaust bigger than your neck trying to roll coal on you because he doesn't know it's an electric vehicle, and he doesn't care. So there's no need to prove to anyone what you have. People pull up beside Mustang GTs and rev their engines so they can get the Mustang to challenge them to a race. You won't get that in this car. But if you do push it, you may blow the CV joints. And that's not a joke. Check the NHTSA site. There are so many complaints about this. They were hard to get as well. They were like impossible to get for months and almost a year, and now they're starting to be replaced for people. But that is probably the biggest drawback about this vehicle is the CV joints tend to fail, either when you're accelerating hard or when you turn it too much. I haven't experienced this. Once again, I drive it like it's broken, so mine has perfectly good CV joints so far. Fingers crossed, knock on wood. And I would definitely test drive the one you're going to get because some of them come pre-blown. You get to 300 miles and you take a hard right turn and all of a sudden you hear the CV clicking. I go into much more detail in my problems video. This issue is so common, in fact, that while I was writing this part of the script, this comment appeared. So it's not a myth, it's real. My suggestion, don't turn it all the way to the lock. Don't accelerate hard if you're turning it. But those are good suggestions for every EV because there's so much power and torque. Throttle response is not aggressive. In fact, if you've owned a Tesla, you might think something's wrong with it. And that's basically all of the driving things. The good, the bad, the peeves, the challenges, the differences, but then there's tech. And this vehicle is definitely new tech, but it's very low-key new tech. That's my best description of it, other than the beeps from the parking sensors, which are panned to the quadrant of the obstacle, which is nice. You get almost no annoying sounds. There's the occasional beep from the adaptive cruise, but for example, my Prologue did not beep at me one time during my entire trip from Morgantown to the Outer Banks. That was 500 miles. And both my wife and son were able to sleep for that reason. I believe the Hyundais and the Fords and the Teslas of the world will give you better warnings during driving as far as obstacles. And since we're talking tech, we should probably address the lane keep assist. LKAS is what comes up when you turn on lane keep assist in an actual Honda, and it's decent. It's pretty good. This is not that. I call this ping pong. If you are already out of your lane, it will decide sometimes to gently push you back towards it. That's the best it does. No lane centering options at all in the Prologue. But what if there were? More on that in a minute. Now, I know I went over the CV joints problem earlier, and since I'm a dedicated Prologue owner who tries to report to the best of my ability about the Prologue, I've listened very intently to the community, and what I can tell you is there are two camps. There is a not problematic Prologue camp, and there is a problematic Prologue camp, which I am not in. That said, here's the breakdown of everything that's gone wrong in the last 10,000 miles. My rear view camera went out for one drive, one time for 10 minutes. I walked in and out of the store and it was back. I had to restart a software update one time because I did it while I was in the vehicle and that was a no-go. The OnStar setup process was bad, to be kind. It took a long time and a lot of calls and no one knew how to help me. I had to escalate issues. It wasn't fun. I rebooted the Infotainment the very first day I had it, wondering why Apple CarPlay wouldn't engage. Turns out I needed to reboot my phone. So in the event your Apple CarPlay doesn't work, please reboot your phone first and then power cycle the car before you reboot the infotainment. It's not a fun process. And of course, Honda Link is annoying and slow, and it's also slow and annoying. But that's it for problems with my Prologue. Now remember, it's a twin. This entire review, in fact, all of my Prologue videos, are videos about a General Motors product. I am reviewing and I own a GM. So what about the sister car, the Blazer EV? Why this over the Blazer EV? From what I can tell, at least in my opinion, it looks better than the Blazer EV. And it has Apple CarPlay. But what does the Blazer do better? Right now, route planning. It's early June of 2025 right now, and that means the supercharger network is not available for Honda Prologue owners. There are three caveats when it comes to charging this on the supercharger network. Number one, you have to trick the Tesla app into thinking this is a Blazer EV. Press charging under your name. Select vehicle details. Top right, press plus. Enter your make, model, and range. If you enter a Chevrolet Blazer EV 2024, do you have an NACS adapter? You say yes. The superchargers that are available to you will become available in the Tesla app. You need an adapter. I'm very satisfied with both the Lectron and the A to Z EV. There's one more caveat. Only certain superchargers have enabled access for non-Tesla EVs. They are all version 3 or newer superchargers, and the newer ones will be white. You'll know what they look like. The other ones are harder to tell though. Look for the ring and the thicker cable. Thicker cable, you won't be able to charge. This one is a version 2 because it looks similar to a version 3, but the cable is thick and the ring is present. Here's what a version 3 that you can charge at would look like. And you always know which ones you can use through the Charge My Other EV section of the Tesla app. But it is available for Blazer owners, and when they navigate, you can get somewhere using a supercharger as part of your route. So that's probably the biggest advantage when it comes to the navigation. Hopefully this year, this month, very soon, the Prologue will get access officially to the supercharger network. All of you who view my channel know that we've had it for almost a year. In fact, the same day that the Blazer got it, we got it too. But putting those trips into navigation, as Tony said earlier, will keep you from having to make your own way of planning a route. And you can actually use the navigation system the way it was designed. Will it be a software update? Will Google Maps just all of a sudden offer those settings? Time will tell. And if you like the looks of the Prologue over the Blazer, well, you're obviously right about that, since I've owned many, many Hondas my whole life, and I always think that the car I own is better looking than anyone else's. Yes, I'm totally brand loyalist and brainwashed by Honda. So if we, Honda Prologue owners, and those of you viewing this video, agree that the Blazer is not quite as good looking, what if it looked better? More on that in a minute. Here's a comment. Honda has clearly lost its way as a company, for the GM-made Prologue customer support is seriously substandard. Many Honda dealerships don't even have a technician trained to work on the Prologue. Honda is promising a line of EVs in the next couple of years, but as far as I can tell, none of them seem to offer anything new. They're trying to play catch-up, but falling further and further behind. This is the reality. The Toyota is not as competitive, but the Honda was a phone-in. And I know the Toyota approach will actually work better in the long term, where you make a horrible EV and then slowly upgrade it, because the new 26BZ is much more competitive than the BZ4X was. But obviously Honda has a strict desire to stay away from EVs as long as possible. Honda doesn't make it, so Honda servicing it is going to kind of be a challenge, and people have experienced that. So what is the Honda Prologue? It's my opinion that the Honda Prologue is just average enough to be the best value in the EV space. I think it's cooler than people give it credit for. I think it offers more value than people give it credit for. I think as far as quality and your personal experience, that can be a wild card because of the CV joints and the service. But if you're considering one and you like it and you've found a deal, pull the trigger. You have my approval. Do I recommend it? Yes. Would I buy it again? Absolutely. And now we have to draw some conclusions. Here's my thoughts. The Honda Prologue is a GM, and there are a lot of them. Escalade IQ, Vistic, Optic, Lyric, Equinox, Blazer, Silverado, Sierra, Hummer, Celestiq. The Bolt's coming back. I know I'm leaving some out as well. But GM is actively trying to be, in my opinion, the second best EV automaker. In fact, they might be trying to be the best, because they just achieved that in Canada. So what does that mean for me? I've had 7 plug-in cars. I count my 18 Honda Clarity because it started this whole journey, and I've learned a few things along the way. The Clarity taught me how poorly engines can sound when they are engineered for efficiency only, and that plug-in hybrids are Jekyll and Hyde powertrains. Double-digit miles of electric perfection, and the rest of your journey is escorted by a desire to go full electric, which I promptly did. My Model Y long range taught me that gas cars are inferior in every way, and that the amount of annoying trips to the gas station where you divert your route and the time you spend there during the course of the year is definitely more than the amount of time you spend at a DC fast charger during road trips. The rear-wheel drive Model 3 LFP taught me that LFP is a superior chemistry, as the charge to 80% limitation is gone, and so are a lot of the safety concerns. It also taught me that companies that have a monopoly on parts will destroy you with markups after your warranty is up. Our headlight replacement was $1,500 and replaced under warranty, so when the warranty was up, the car was gone. I learned 100 lessons from my Fisker Ocean Sport, most of them through financial penalties, but it also taught me never to buy the base model. Where the Prologue EX is still pretty well equipped, the Ocean Sport was a disappointment in many ways, like the stereo, a criminal audio experience. The 2024 Model 3 taught me that cooled seats matter, the second generation is usually better, and that yes, you can kill a set of from the dealer tires in 7,500 miles. When it was time to rotate, it was not time to rotate, they were toast. Oh, and pick the color you want. Just do it. I've decided after 10 white cars that I like white, and it only took 10 white cars. The Chevy Bolt taught me that research, patience, and pulling the trigger are all equally important in the search for a used EV. Also, low mileage matters. And of course, fast charging is excellent to have, but not necessary. Trips can be done without it. I don't recommend it to anyone, but they can be done. Finally, the Prologue taught me that I can't live without one-pedal driving, but I can live without a lot of horsepower. GM took a safe and experienced approach building EVs. Also, I like the idea of a Tesla more than I like owning one, and 150 kilowatts is fast enough for me at the DC unit. I also fell in love with wireless CarPlay. My Prologue is great, and I love it. In fact, I love it so much, I want my next new vehicle to also be a Prologue. I'm a creator, and I want to continue to create. And in order to do that, I need to have new cars, new tech, and new experiences. But I also have a problem because my Fisker was part of my trade deal for my Prologue, so I didn't put any money down, which leaves this payment at 60 months at $1,050. And that's too much, and as much as I'd love to keep this one, I have to reduce my payment. I can no longer financially make sense of $1,050 for this car. It's like 3 Prologue leases. Also, the interest rate is 7.7%, and I've had enough of that as well. So I'm going to be looking for a better interest rate. And my wife will not lease, so whatever we get, we will buy. And I would really like it if some of the things that are missing on this Prologue weren't missing, but I would also like it if it was just another Prologue. I know, super picky, but since this payment is insane, lowering it's not going to be a problem, and there's going to be plenty of selection out there. But if I get rid of the car, I have to get rid of the loan. And if you own a Prologue right now, you know that my loan is worth way more than my car. Remember the Toyota? Well, that's got to go. In fact, I've already done that. I was actually able to sell it for $7,000 in 2 days. Reliable Toyota sells really quickly, big shocker. I don't like selling things on Facebook Marketplace, but Carvana wanted to give me $3,500 and the dealership offered me $500. So obviously I was headed to Facebook Marketplace. So let's go back to my list from the beginning. I'd love to have lane centering, superchargers in the navigation, a sporty feel but without losing the practicality of the Prologue, more comfortable seats would be awesome, as well as ventilated seats. A few more features would be nice considering I am a creator. If possible, I'd like to have fewer beeps from the sensors, which is going to be hard because we're already in the bottom portion of EVs with beeps. Also, is it too much to ask for the battery percentage on the main screen? Finally, I really like my Prologue overall, so I'd like to keep as many features as possible. So, how do I make my next new car the Prologue? Remember, I've been reviewing a GM this entire time, and the only thing different about the Honda is the way it looks and the badge. And I'll just address it right away. Apple CarPlay. I will lose that, but this one does everything else. Lane centering, native superchargers, no more beeps. It's obviously more sporty, super sporty, in fact. The seats are way more comfortable and ventilated, and now that I can look at them beside each other, the practicality is identical. Plus, my wife liked it. Remember my first Prologue video? Who was driving? And yes, I bought one before I sold the other, which conveniently would make the Prologue something you could have. If you're interested in my Prologue, the first person to give me $31,000 can have it. And if that doesn't pan out, in July I'm going to sell it to Carvana for whatever they'll give me. And you may be thinking I'm abandoning the Honda Prologue owners, but ask a Fisker Ocean owner and they'll tell you the opposite. I've continued to report on Fisker because I care about my viewers. I won't be leaving anyone in the dark, including my Prologue owners. Also, I could be wrong about this, but I believe I am the most detailed, unbiased, thorough, and succinct Honda Prologue resource on the internet, and I hope that can speak for itself. Also, after the initial kinks are worked out with any vehicle, the communities tend to figure things out for themselves. I just hope my insights, research, and information have helped you join the Prologue community with an educated idea of what you're getting into. And since I have the Prologue for another month, I've got plenty of time to compare it in every way to this Blazer EV SS. I will of course break down everything about the deal, the shopping experience, and the other vehicles I looked at, because I looked at many other options before I went with this one. But I really didn't want to leave the GM ecosystem. I never thought I would feel that way after a year of owning the Prologue, but I totally do. And if a payment of $1,050 wasn't enough of an excuse to get out from under the current loan I have on my Honda Prologue, we may lose the $7,500 tax credit in 2026. And that's not very far away. So instead of 2 to 3 more years of this 4-digit payment, I think it's safe to take another stab at something else while I wait for the next generation of Honda EVs, if they make them. But what do you think? Did I make the right choice, and what would you have done if you were in my position? Join Patreon or become a YouTube member for early access to videos. Lots of exciting content to come. Grab you an EV80 Kit t-shirt while you're at it. Subscribe for more. We'll see you on the next one.
Hey! Smash the like button!
Thank you.